And welcome to a Peel Yourself Off the Mat Monday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForrest, joined as always on these Monday programs by my good friend. And this guy, you talk about clairvoyance. His prediction on the USA-Canada hockey game was not only spot on, but he nails the score. He gives you 3-2. Canada, thinking Trudeau's going to be celebrating, Donald Trump will be face down in the gutter, and the U.S. team was going up in smoke in the rematch. Hotly contested game, goes to overtime. Certainly couldn't complain about it if you had either side, and that's why maybe both were minus 110. But we welcome into the program right away, right here at the top, my good friend Mike Jones. Mike, how are you? Are you riding the same kind of hot streak on other things? Because we had a lousy week here on the show in college basketball last week, and we're hoping to redeem ourselves, but we're seeing a lot of interesting results. And I don't know if anybody has a handle, unless you want to concede Auburn the championship or maybe a couple of others. A lot of people making a case for Duke now, but I'm not sure anybody has an exact, precise handle on who's going to win the NCAA tournament. We know it's not going to be a three-peat after that disaster between St. John's and UConn yesterday. Yeah. And is it fair to say, I'm not sure that this team is championship caliber, but we say this all the time, never sleep on our good friend Rick Pitino.
Do not.
Is he a factor now, in your opinion? Could be a top five team after the rankings come out.
Yeah, you follow on X a little bit, and I've met Rick a few times. He's a horse guy.
He's a great guy.
Yep, and got some friends that are close to him and saying he's riding the wave right now. But I think he's got the athletes. They seem to be buying in defensively. If they can knock down threes, they're going to be a tough out. And that's what they did yesterday. They were hitting the shots early, got up big, and held on to the lead because they can defend. Great athletes, a lot of strong kids, good rebounding team. You mentioned those three teams that you talked about, and you could throw Houston in there, and there's the Alabamas who has a big win against Kentucky. But I'm going to be riding the Johnnies a little bit. I can tell you, the Big East, it's throughout my country where I grew up, and it's going to be a tough run. But I think St. John's could do some damage in this tournament. That's what I think. They're built for it, and they got the coach for it.
I suppose if you were going to make a wager and they had something as broad of a category as what conference will the champion come from, which I'd imagine somewhere there's got to be a sports book in Guam where you can get action on something like that, the SEC would be an overwhelming favorite. But Patino's making a case maybe for a merger of the Big East and the ACC. ACC kind of down this year, so I don't know if that's any kind of indictment against Duke's chances of winning it all. They certainly are playing well. For some reason, I'm having a tough time. I like John Shire, and I don't hate Duke as much. I don't root for them to lose every game like I did when Krzyzewski was coaching because of the whining and the fetching. And you always hate that when you're getting extremely favorable treatment. It would be like Mahomes complaining about officiating.
Right.
And, well, you know what? The Zebras really cost us this one. You're like, go fuck yourself, Mahomes. I mean, how could you possibly cry about anything? Although we see that all the time. I mean, we're seeing that at the very top of the political spectrum right now, that the guys that cry the most seem to be getting all of the breaks. If you're betting games, Bet Online. Mike, you know this is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. They have the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL. Is Ovechkin going to do it? UFC. There was some great boxing in Saudi Arabia over the weekend. Another classic, setting up a trilogy between Bivol and Beterbiev, and we were right on both fights so far. They had the same scorecards in both fights, majority decisions, and thin margin for Beterbiev. Highly disputed his first one. Bivol wins the rematch, and now there'll be a trilogy there, and hopefully you'll see another exciting fight that'll put it in the great trilogies in boxing history. You can bet on that, too, at BetOnline. For every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with the odds, the stats, and more for every game, every play, every victory. BetOnline, the game starts here. There was a great spectrum of stuff. Well, we've been talking about the usual withdrawal from the football season, but I don't think there was any shortage of things that you could indulge in over the weekend, all across the board. NBA action, many people are complaining that the regular season is more meaningless than ever, but you've been making scores. You were riding the Trailblazers there for a while. I started to get enamored with the Denver Nuggets when they were on that 9-game winning streak, and then they turned right around and get shellacked by the Lakers, who are still trying to figure out what the hell to do with Luka Doncic. Luka comes through with a giant game. the other night, where he finally looks like the Luka Doncic that we saw with the Dallas Mavericks for all of those years. And you're looking at that dynamic with LeBron. Does that create possibilities? Jimmy Butler's at Golden State. They're 5-1 since his arrival there.
Mhm.
Even though, oddly, this is kind of a strange thing about sports, and you've been a sports fan and observer your whole life like I have, where guy comes to a team and he has essentially the same numerology, the same stats as Andrew Wiggins, who was traded to the Heat in this deal for Jimmy Butler. And yet the team's infinitely better for some reason
Yeah.
because Jimmy Butler's out there. Maybe because he's a better complement. He takes the ball into the paint. He's
Mhm.
not inclined to just chuck from 3-point range. I don't think Wiggins was that. But all of a sudden, Golden State now, they're thinking they've got it going on. Where was the focus of your concentration over the weekend in terms of sports viewing and betting?
Well, we picked the 2 games a day for 3 games. I went 0-3 in college and 3-0 in the NBA. So I was a 500 picker
Which is a
most of
strange
the week. Yeah,
reversal of form
yeah, it's right.
for
And so,
everybody. I mean, no one can pick the NBA anymore.
right. And so here's what I'm watching with, especially with Golden State and what I see. Jimmy Butler is a tough, tough personality. And when
No
a guy
doubt.
like Draymond Green, who's very outspoken, who I was very intrigued to see him attack the league, to think of what I've said, that it's a 3-point shooting league, stars league, lack of effort, all that. He gets his quote on the bottom line saying what most of my basketball aficionados are in agreement with. And I was shocked to see that. Then he comes out and says after Jimmy Butler gets there, just him walking in the room, we got a chance to win the title. These are the kind of things that a psychological part of betting that I've been talking about through a couple of my friends that I explained to, that you can't just look at lines, you can't just look at trends, you got to find something. And I'm going to attack one a little later in the picks, but
Beautiful.
Jimmy Butler has absolutely brought something to Golden State. You saw it yesterday. You start off to a 9-4 lose, call timeout. Next thing you know, they're up 19-9. They go on a 15-0 run. And he's just doing the things that Golden State needs to be done. Where now, give that attention. Don't put as much pressure on Steph. The bench seems to get riled up. This is what happens with teams when you get these long seasons. You're going to go in streaks. Now, it'll come back probably a little bit, but does Golden State make a run to the 6th or 7th spot, and then, or 6th or 5th spot, and now they avoid the play-in, and do they become ability to do some damage with a inexperienced upper echelon of teams in the West? But I'll tell you, I got to watch OKC last night, and I did pick Minnesota, thought the 9 points were too much. But, man, when they were up 19 in that second quarter, I'm like, wow, well, look at this team. And they have like 10 or
That
11
happened
guys
quickly too.
that all play, and SGA is something else to watch.
Yes.
So, if you're going to be watching a little bit of the NBA, I'm starting to, I've been down on the league for a while, but yesterday I dug in a little bit and saw some pretty interesting stuff, and especially in Golden State and watching the bounce back after all the big runs and being up 19 in the second quarter, then down 2 at the half when Minnesota put it on them. And then they hit a half-court shot to go from 5 to 2, and you're thinking, oh, maybe they'll be okay. So you might take a second-half bet on something where I'm not talking to the show, but I might reach out and say, Jesus, they just look like when they pull it back together. But he came in the game in the fourth quarter down 5, and next thing you know, they're up 9. The team is just, SGA gets it done. I think he's the MVP. And as far as the Lakers go,
You would have to think so. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what the odds of price is on that
Yeah.
right now, but
Right.
I mean, barring him being injured and having some kind of catastrophic fall off and demise from where he's at right now, clear cut MVP for
Right.
a team that has half game behind Cleveland for the best record in the NBA and well ahead of those two teams separated themselves from the pack
Mhm.
a little bit, which brings up a question, Mike Jones, that I have for you. And why is this team being so sorely overlooked? I understand now they didn't have Donovan Mitchell in the postseason last year, and so they had no chance of going
Mhm.
all the way. Celtics end up winning the championship. The Celtics are in there at plus 225 to win it again, a repeat, which you're thinking is going to be difficult. Oklahoma City, I believe, is also plus 225 to win the championship.
Mhm.
Cleveland with the best record in basketball, and they've been dynamite all year long,
Right.
and they're plus 850.
Yeah, just
So why are they being completely overlooked and disregarded in that category? You're getting 4 times the price on the Cavaliers, who annihilated your New York Knicks by 40 points on Saturday night, and the Knicks come right back. I think Leon Rose is sniffing formaldehyde this morning because he has to realize that even at 37-20, that the Knicks are not a championship caliber team. Now, that was 2 very distinct hammerings that they took. from the two top teams in the conference. So
Yeah.
you're assuming that they're not going to be able to overcome that once they get to the postseason. But does it not seem like? And what am I missing here? That plus 850 on the Cavs. Now, of course, they may not win the thing, but if you were going to take a team and take a shot with a price, where are you getting more value?
Yeah.
Celtics are with the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have been the best team. This is kind of like the last election, where people are just overlooking the obvious and saying, "Yeah, that's our guy." Um, I'd be inclined, even if this money goes up in smoke, to feel pretty comfortable about. I'd rather put a stick at plus 850 on the Cavaliers than bet $100 to win 225 on the Celtics.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Cavs yesterday without Garland, quality guard, go in and beat Memphis at home. They had a big win against the Knicks. Knicks, who are now 0-7 against the three teams you just mentioned throughout the season. So they're still a little ways away, a big player away. They talked about getting their center back, but I don't know that that's going to make that big of a difference. Yeah, I would think Cleveland is value for sure. I can take the best record in the league and make them an 8-1 favorite, which means
8-1.
probably Denver's ahead of them, right? I would think Denver's in the middle there somewhere.
Yeah, Denver
in between the two teams that you're talking about,
or something like that.
right? So I mean, you're probably getting the third, fourth, or fifth look. So I would say, yeah, I would take a flyer on it. They're good. It's just are they playoff tested? But Mobley and Allen give them an interior presence. When they get Garland back, they have streaky outside shooters. Mitchell can get wherever he wants to go on the floor, and he's a quality player. So yeah, they got enough. Just whether they can last the 7-game series against the big guys is what they'll be challenged. I would bet you if somehow Golden State got there, as much as Cleveland's been much better, they probably would be a dog to Golden State if they ended up playing them in the finals. Just because of the experience of what happens at this point and what the price maker will say. And of course, there's where the money's going. So I would say there's not a lot of takers on Cleveland for them to be that high.
Isn't that the most detrimental self-sabotaging maneuver that any gambler degenerate can make, and that is to overlook the obvious?
Yeah, right.
And here we are. I mean, you're looking at it. They're basically taunting you and saying Cleveland can't do it. They had injuries last year, or they might have made their way into the Eastern Conference Finals, and who knows? Might have been challenging. You ended up with Boston could not have had a luckier draw last year in the postseason. Every team they went up against was compromised by injury, and they still had their share of missteps in the process. And then out of the West comes the Dallas Mavericks out of nowhere, when you thought that they were going to be facing somebody else, somebody that was actually a better team. And what did they lose? Did they lose a couple of games there to the Mavericks also? Yeah. And Doncic was banged up in the final series as well. So you couldn't have had a luckier ride, a magic carpet ride to the championship than the Celtics did. Not denying that they were deserving or implying that, because that they did what was necessary. But you talk about a lucky soft draw. That's kind of the way it went throughout the postseason for them. I'm thinking, and also on your Knicks, I mean, Tom Thibodeau, who, does he look as depressed as any individual? He's got a head coaching job in the NBA with a real good team, and he always looks like he's ready to put a bullet in his head. And he's been playing his starters 45 minutes a game. Why does he have 11 assistant coaches? Is there anybody there saying, hey, Tom, give this guy a rest? It doesn't happen in his philosophy. So you're assuming they're going to be dead meat by the time just stick a fork in them.
Yeah.
To get to the postseason. But that's the curious one for me. And I'm probably dead wrong on this. I don't see what's missing from the Cavaliers' resume this year to make you think that they should be 8-1, 4 times the price of the Celtics and Oklahoma City. And to your point about the chucking that's going on in the NBA and how the game is kind of diminished, and you hear a lot of people say, I don't watch it anymore because it's just a 3-point shooting contest. So I guess the Celtics game against the Knicks preceded on the television broadcast. I think they were on the same station back-to-back, the game between Minnesota and Oklahoma City. And so they got into that game a little bit late for some reason. Right. I don't know what was going on. But it was about 3 minutes into the game, and I'm looking and I'm seeing the stats. Well, one team was already 0 for 4 from 3-point range, and the other was 1 for 3. So they only played 3 minutes. They had already attempted combined 7 3-pointers. So what happened to making plays? How about setting a pick away from the ball and freeing somebody up to go into the paint? And even when they do penetrate, boom, goes right out to the corner for the easier shot of any type of 3-pointer. But is that, eventually going to be the ruination of the game? Or we've said this about sports forever. Oh, yeah, well, if they keep doing that, nobody's going to watch it anymore. And yet they're making jillions of dollars, and the revenue streams, even in baseball, which a lot of people thought had become exceedingly boring, are through the roof. Where you can pay an Alex Bregman $40 million, even though you already have a third baseman if you're the Red Sox.
I'm going to bring up something I saw Friday night late. So I fall asleep on the couch, wake up, late game is on, Houston and Minnesota. There's about 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and I just put it on, just flipped it on, and I was watching. And I caught a 4-possession, each team gets the ball twice,
Yes.
run from like 10 minutes to 9 minutes. There was one pass. One pass in 4 possessions, meaning the guy got the rebound, came down, should have shot a 3. The guy takes the ball out of the basket after it goes in. Edwards got the ball from Minnesota, ran the clock down to 8 seconds and shot a 3 and missed. The other guy gets the ball, passes it out the outlet. They stop the break. The guy's dribbling around, gets in the lane, takes a short jumper, misses. Edwards gets the ball again, comes down, drives to the basket, ball gets blocked out of bounds. And I'm sitting here looking at this going, 1 pass in 4 possessions. And I said, this is what's problem. So if you're looking at spacing and the players as a basketball guy, they're all trying to space so they open the lane like LeBron created all this. Steph Curry with his open threes created all this. What is that guy doing when he runs down the court and sits in the corner for 20 seconds and then runs back? Does he get disenchanted? Does he not want to move or whatever? So I put the complication of that with a Larry Bird video of all the passes he made and sent it to my basketball guys. So I just watched a thing go with 4 possessions and 1 pass, and here's this. And there's a minute of Larry Bird doing all his passes. And I said, this is the difference in watching the game today. So I think you're going to see some of these teams that are coached better, that do a little bit more movement. And Golden State did that a little bit yesterday when they got the lead. Getting balls to the basket, guys breaking in. They got the ball to Looney. Butler is not that 3-point shooter, but he'll move in and get in the lane. I think the mid-range has got to come back a little bit, and SGA does that as good as anybody. It says he's the best mid-range and ball with the man with the ball in the league right now. So you got to watch these different players and see if they can't be stopped, and hopefully the game gets a little better, maybe watchable at playoff time.
All right, yeah, and a lot of stuff, as I mentioned, in boxing. And I did want to mention the passing of a guy who probably came up with one of the great sports quotes of all time. And boxing lends itself to comical sports quotes. Of course, my dear friend Bert Sugar was known to come up with these quips, and he was the same way to talk to, even if you were just sitting with him having a drink. He was fantastic. Lou Duva was a classic. He gets up at 6 in the morning to run no matter what time it is, that kind of thing. And you've had many great quotes. Tex Cobb was brilliant at coming up with quotes and still is very, very refreshing when you're talking with him and listening to him discuss his career. We've had many guys like that. But maybe the best line ever that came out of boxing was uttered by Greg Haugen, who briefly was the lightweight champion of the world. He was around when the division was just absolutely loaded, and there were many of these fights on network TV, and he was about to go in. He's at a press conference with Julio Cesar Chavez, who he's about to get clobbered by. And he says, well, what do I care about his record? He's 75-0 with 74 knockouts, but his first 65 fights were against Tijuana cab drivers. And he says that in front of Chavez, which no doubt inspired him to make it even more painful for Haugen. But I did want to mention his passing because I would attribute that to being among my favorite, if not my all-time favorite, sports quotes. And that's a very rich category through the years when you consider all the great people that have been involved. And we're able to make light Bob Uecker and all of these different people that were just absolutely fantastic at coming up with this sort of stuff. But that was unfortunate. And you could have made a score. You were getting a price on the guy that everybody thought won the first fight in that Bivol Beterbiev fight in Saudi Arabia. And wouldn't be when will all sports just take place in Saudi Arabia? You can't compete with the Sheik. I don't know if you're a big boxing fan, but there was a guy, Al Heyman, who had pro boxing champions, and he took over the sport. He was pouring tons of money into it. I think he's somewhere in that same hotel that Leonard Toews finished up his life with when he was the owner of the Eagles and gambled all his money away and then blamed the casino. Was there any validity to that case? Should the judge not have considered this a little bit more seriously? Well, he plied with drinks, and that's how I got clobbered.
When I lived in Vegas, it came out. I think a guy sued Bally's for $100,000 that he lost because he was overserved, and they had it on tape. He could barely walk, and he won. So
he won the case.
He won the case. Yeah, it became a big issue because as a drinker, we were all there. I had some friends that
It's a
would
great
go
excuse, though, isn't it?
would go pretty late. Well, I mean, I could tell you this is a fact. It's crazy. It's one of my worst runs ever. Like they looked at my markers and they were taken out between 2 and 5 in the morning. So when you sit down and you're out there and you're having a little bit and you're coming back from the night out and all of a sudden you're digging in, it's tough. And so a friend of mine who's a very high end casino guy, and I talked about this at length when I lived there about 10, 15 years ago. And the conversation was, how do we protect people? One of the things was that not giving out markers that late in the evening when people are seemingly
But I
toxic.
need the money. I'm stuck.
So you can get thrown out of the casino for being rude and obnoxious, but yet they can let you say, all right, here's a $20,000 market. You can't even sign your name. You don't even know what your name is, but yet they'll let you play. So yeah, there's been some, things go on a little bit different out west, but it's, that's something I had heard, and they were trying to figure out a way to help this guy because he lost a lot of money and trying to get him away from the idea of playing after dinner. When you go out after the nightclub and go in.
That would kill me. That's worse than the ATM machines.
Yeah.
You can't hit them again until midnight.
Yeah.
And you're out of ammunition at about 4 in the afternoon in the race book somewhere, betting losers at Philadelphia Park. And then you're thinking, oh, shit, I can't tap into my card till midnight. And that's why in any casino, you'll see the line out the door if you're there at 12:01 trying to access your bank account because everybody's in the same freaking boat. All right, we want to get to some picks here.
Okay.
And I don't know what you're looking at. College basketball?
Yeah, I think I'm going to look at the big one tonight. Houston goes down to Texas Tech to avenge the loss. The Texas Tech handed them at home. Texas Tech playing pretty well. Houston had a little breezer, but up 15-18 early, and then all of a sudden Iowa State, without their two leading scorers, comes back and makes it a 2-point game in the second half, end up winning by 9, Houston. Were they looking a little bit past that once they got the big league possible? I don't know. I kind of like Texas Tech as a home dog in this. They're playing pretty well. They're getting 2 tonight at home against Houston, 5 versus 9. I'll take my chances. Texas Tech, takes them again.
2 points at home seems
Yeah.
like a little bit of a generous allotment. That's great. Much like the plus 850, which is haunting me now that I haven't acted on this with the Cleveland Cavaliers. All right, so you have Texas Tech getting
Yeah.
2 and a hook at home against Houston, which
Yeah.
some people consider to be a viable entry for the championship and the ultimate crown there in the NCAA tournament. March Madness not that far away. Anything else that you're looking at, Mike?
Yeah, a lot of back-to-backs tonight in the NBA, but there's one game that I'm going to bring up, and again, it's the psychological adding of gambling. Where is Philadelphia 76ers mindset? Today it starts off on Get Up with a big discussion on Joel Embiid status. Should he keep playing? His knee's going to need surgery at the end of the year. One of the guys on the show was all upset about he played in the Olympics. He shouldn't have done that. He went and played for the U.S. and he was hurt and did that. Now all of a sudden he's hurt now and maybe he should have taken that time off. And so he's saying play him. Tim Legler's out there saying, no, we don't know if you should play him. But I look at the line, and Tyrone Maxey and Embiid are questionable. The line went from 3 overnight to 4.5 for Philadelphia. Chicago's been struggling. They're down team. I don't know. Is Philly going to pack it in? It's that old Phoenix Suns adage, which, by the way, since I said something, they're 0-3
buried, yes.
against the number. They're 0-3 against the number said it, losing yesterday as a 1.5 point favorite in Toronto and get blown out. And
Yes.
to me, I felt that was shocking because we were talking about this game, me and another handicapper, and he was like, well, who's out? Why is that line 1.5? And I'm like, yeah, maybe Durant's sitting. Well, if Durant's sitting, I want to bet it. Well, everybody's healthy, everybody played, and the line pops to 3. So I thought the lines maker made a mistake there. Now he sees everybody's playing, so he jumps the line. And now I'm starting to think, you know what? When those lines move lately, they haven't been working. Man, I'm starting to lean Toronto, but I couldn't get him off Phoenix, and I tried to, but I didn't take the game because of it. But in this case, I'm going to take Chicago plus 4.5. Hopefully, maybe reach out for a 5 and say that, who's not going to play are those questionable guys? And more importantly, is Philly into it? Paul George goes there thinking he's winning a title. They're 14 games under 500. They lose to the Nets Saturday night. A hapless Nets is an 11-point favorite. I mean, what do you do? Like, this is what I think you find. You're going to find these teams that had high expectations. Are they going to be right? I said this last week about Phoenix. Wembanyama doesn't play, so I had scared off the game. They beat him, they beat him going away. And then I get lucky on Saturday, absolute lucky. I'm like getting 5, down 6 with 10 seconds to go. My team scores and ends the game at 4. So that was a complete lucky win for Chicago, a cover. So, I'm going to go back to the Bulls again, saying they got another game. I like the center, Vucevic, the kid, that they have there that can average 20 and 10. Those are the two games I'm thinking I'm looking at.
All right, let's hope we can cash on a parlay. Yeah, 76ers seem to be meandering and like nomads in no man's land because they really can't establish any kind of identity. There's not much to play for. You would think that just based on that alone, I mean, are there any championship aspirations that would be even remotely legitimate for the 76ers? Absolutely not.
No.
So why would you risk further damage to Embiid? But by playing him, it almost seems like cruel and unusual punishment, even though I would imagine that he has gone ahead and acknowledged that he wants to continue in spite of the struggles that he's had. But it's been all year long. And I don't know. It's one of those guys now that you're starting to think it's kind of like Clayton Kershaw coming back to the Dodgers. I mean, is this guy ever going to be right again?
Yeah. I'm telling you, when he is right, he is unstoppable. He's probably the toughest offensive force in the game. He can shoot threes, so you have to bring a guy 7'1" out there to guard him, which pulls you away from the basket. They got no players. I mean, the architect of that team had the right idea. The problem is,
should have been better.
Paul George is a veteran player you bring in. They probably don't even have a number one pick. I don't know that off the top of my head because they had to probably trade something to get it, and probably the number one went out. So that's a potential lottery pick that they're going to end up giving up because if they don't make the playoffs, it's a lottery pick. And now you have Maxey, who's probably the most electrifying, one of the top 5 electrifying guards in the league. So you think you got a great piece there. And then you bring Embiid in, and, when your leader and your best player on the court is this guy who's on-off injured and, might have an attitude issue. I don't know. But it just seems like you go there thinking you're going to win a title. You're number 2 behind Boston in the East when you start the season. And now you're barely making the playoffs. And similar to Miami, like looking at the Heat game, right? The Heat are laying 1. They've got blown out in the last 2 fourth quarters. Toronto takes them to overtime, right? They got OKC. I had OKC on the ropes last week, and I made a big statement about how they gave up 32-8 in the fourth quarter. I got a push, getting 14 up 10 going into the fourth quarter, get a push. And it's like they've
been having
trials and tribulations. But the Heat is struggling. Now the Heat go into Atlanta, who just had a hard-fought game with 290 points scored in their game against Detroit last night. But the Heat had a big lead in the fourth quarter again and don't even get a cover. They get outscored by 14 against Milwaukee and
lose.
You don't know the mindset. It's like, where are they going? I mean,
I have to give JB Bickerstaff some credit also.
Yes.
Detroit's played very well this year. And
yes.
They've been like Philadelphia, engaged in like a 20-year process.
Yeah.
Where they had every opportunity to get a team together and with draft picks, drafting very highly. Didn't have the best of luck. Their number 1 overall pick, the one year they had it, Cade Cunningham, turned out to be a really good player.
Yes, he's excellent.
They start out that way, but it wasn't a spectacular year where you were getting Wembanyama or a franchise generational type of player at the number 1 slot. But really created themselves very well from where they were coming from. Where can we find you? The Big Gunner podcast has been.
We're right here tomorrow. We're going to give it out some more games to talk Giants football and what the quarterback situation probably will be. And I'm going to give a little bit on the first 5 picks of this draft and see where the Giants are going to fall, what they're going to do, and give some opinions. And we're going to keep handing out picks. And then you and I are going to work on something pretty soon together that we're going to share with all our listeners. And we got some things going, but the Big Gunner podcast tomorrow, you can give us a look here right on No Filter.
Right here on NoFilter.net. Mike, always a pleasure, my friend. Great. Thanks for joining us. Appeal yourself off to Matt Monday here on Bury Your Bookie. Hoping you guys have tremendous success, and we will join you again tomorrow with Scotty M. Mike, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for being with us, and thank you for joining us on today's episode of Bury Your Bookie.
Great to be here.